Yesterday we had the VIX predict a down day for the S&P 500. An 85% chance we had a down day today or tomorrow. We did get it today. The VIX was correct. The Dow was down 245 points, down just over 0.5%. The S&P was down 0.56%, down 33 points. NASDAQ down just over 0.5%. The Russell down just over 1%. The VIX was up 1.85%. We had Nvidia earnings and after hours. I told you I thought they'd likely come in good. I think we'd end up seeing Nvidia getting a pop higher. But the market, Nvidia did beat on earnings and revenue. And you can see that right here. And in after hours, after earnings reports, we have Nvidia up just over 5.5%. Currently at the moment, 5.58%. It was down about 0.5% during the session. So again, right now, Nvidia getting good earnings and rallying in after hours based on those earnings. And you can see that here. Now again, previously I told you I thought Nvidia had topped. Still think the leadership can top before the market, but again, I've talked about how the whole move has started to look corrective with Nvidia. I think NASDAQ and S&P are going to go push to new highs. Nvidia may join the NASDAQ. We're back at the in July peaks there in 2024. We saw the divergence between Nvidia and the NASDAQ. We could have this massive ABC move, or even if we an alternative count where we mark this as a 3 here and a 4 here. Again, you still arrive at a 4. Could be the first wave higher in this 5-leg push higher, which I think is very, very possible. I was looking for another push higher for Nvidia, as well as for the NASDAQ and the S&P 500. Nvidia helped the market continue the rally. So this is what I think is likely the case. First scenario is that we would stop making new highs. Again, this is looking like a 5-leg push higher. Now we're pushing up here. Now we're getting the rally in after hours, not seen on this chart. So I think that you have this first wave higher, 5-leg push higher for Nvidia here in the daily time frame. Changed my opinion. Again, I told you, see the NASDAQ take out the 200-week moving average. Could just be marking this whole thing with Nvidia as corrective, as I've been talking about with the NASDAQ. Sometimes you do see the leadership not making new highs. Stocks take over. You still see, the S&P and the NASDAQ still make new highs, but sometimes the leadership doesn't. Doesn't always play out that way, but sometimes it does. This is a very similar count to what I have on the S&P 500 and for the NASDAQ. Allowed the futures, the Nvidia earnings have allowed the futures to recover. You can see that here with the 4-hour chart of the E-mini futures of the S&P. We had sold off. We were down 33 points here in the 4-hour time frame, hit the 20 period and recovered back up, getting a doji candlestick. And we're going to have the lunch break, and then we'll see what happens after the lunch break for futures, what the next bar is. But we tried to flip it to red, couldn't do it after the Nvidia earnings. We were down 33 points, and we recovered back up about 24.5 points. Rally after hours. That rebound back up will spill over into tomorrow's session as we start the new session after the lunch break just a little while from now. E-mini futures of the S&P 500. 4-hour chart, very close to that 60-minute chart. This trades nearly around the clock. NASDAQ 100 was down 97 points. It recovered all of those losses. Now futures recovering all of that and added an additional 64.5 points to that recovery. Again, getting a bottoming tail. Tried to flip the cloud to red here in the 4-hour time frame. Couldn't do it. And again, getting a bottoming tail here as well. We got a doji on the S&P futures. We got a bottoming tail in the form of a hammer here on the NASDAQ 100 futures. So again, we'll see if we can resume the rally. Are we going sideways here? And we're now going to get another leg higher surrounding the Nvidia earnings. We'll see how we close by tomorrow and then later in the week on the short trading week. Today we got the Fed minutes. I'll talk more about that in just a second. The Fed minutes today. Tomorrow we'll get the first revision for the GDP for the first quarter. Friday we get the PCE data. Year over year, it's expected to lower with the headline number. With the core year over year, it's supposed to be the exact same, holding steady. Month over month inflation is supposed to be 0.1% for both the core and the headline number, so it's supposed to be tame. And Nvidia earnings, after the bell, we'll get the response to that tomorrow during the session. We're already seeing a positive response with futures and after hours. We'll see what happens here with the by Friday, before the market opens. We'll get the PCE inflation data. We got the minutes today, and surprise, surprise, the Fed is worried about inflation. By the way, we did have a couple of other earnings besides Nvidia after hours. We are seeing a positive response to earnings with the futures and after hours. We got the minutes, and again, the Fed worried about the tariffs. Cracks me up. The Fed should be worried about the recession, not about the tariffs. But the Fed, bunch of Keynesians over there, they're blindsided to what's really going on. Why they say things like in 2006 and 2007, there's no housing bubble. Or in 2007, we're going to have a soft landing. There's not going to be a recession. Or in 2021, going into 2022, inflation was rising to 9%. Inflation is transitory. If you believe Keynesian economics, you make huge mistakes like this. That's why I always say the Fed's policies always lead to negative outcomes. Always. Now they're worried about tariffs. They were, see, back when they should have been worried about inflation, back in 2021, they were dovish. They weren't hawkish. Now they're hawkish when they should be dovish. They should be slashing rates because we're about to enter recession. They're keeping rates elevated. I did a few cuts and then keeping them elevated. They're concerns about inflation. Inflation will tick back up, but eventually we'll get a deflationary bust, as I've talked about in the past. What happened in 2007? They're making the same mistake they made back in 2007, the same mistake they made back in 2000. That's what the Fed does. Eventually, if we see inflation begin to tick back up, which I believe that it will, historically that has happened, right before the recession hits, you see the inflation start ticking back up and still going to slash rates. I had somebody tell me the Fed can't slash rates if inflation's ticking higher. Better go back and look at history because, again, inflation was rising and it was sure a whole lot higher back in 2007 and 2008 than it is right now. The Fed was doing jumbo rate cuts. They'll do the same again. Because realize we're not going to have a soft landing. By the way, isn't slashing rates right now. They didn't panic with their 21% sell-off with the S&P 500, and we're likely going to go follow Bitcoin, move to new highs, eventually complete a blow-off top, then begin to crash, usher in the bear market, begin to price in the recession, then the Fed will panic. Sell-off we've had was a preview of coming attractions. By the way, the Fed concerned about inflation because they believe the tariffs cause inflation. They do not. Inflation is caused by an increase in the money supply. And by the way, the Fed's policies are often associated with inflation. Things that they do can increase the money supply. They think the tariffs are the boogeyman. They need to look in the mirror because it's them and their horrible policies. I told you, I think that we're going to continue higher to likely form these divergences, and we're going sideways right now. We're likely going to get this pop higher, and we could even move to a new high and go back and test this trend line right here, as I've talked about. And if you do, you've got a possible inverse head and shoulders, as I've been talking about. Those charts in my videos. I think you're going to see green show up here. Could be with Nvidia. Get a powerful move tomorrow. We can move above this high. Bearish inside day that's given us a pullback. We got the hollow red candlestick. You'll see it on the other chart. We're now getting blue bars, but the cloud is still red here. So we need to be able to clear this high over here if we're going to go higher. And if we do, I'll be watching this trend line. I'll be watching the high from February over here. And to be watching, do we get a lower high? We'll try to make a new high like Bitcoin has already done. If you want to see my latest Bitcoin video. I just made it right before I made this video. You can go and watch that at the end of this video. I'll link it at the end. But I think you're going to end up forming a divergence here in the daily time frame before all is said and done, before you get the bigger pullback, as I've talked about at great length and detail. I think we'll flip the cloud here to green, maybe with the Nvidia earnings or with the PCE inflation data. We'll see how it unfolds. And as we wrap up the month of May, I get all these people going, oh, so in May and go away. We're going to finish at a peak here, and then I think we'll pull back in June for a few weeks. I think we're going much higher into the summer or maybe on into the fall, as I've talked about. But I think this divergence here on the Awesome Oscillator and on the RSI, I think it's going to end up playing out. S&P daily here. Now again, NASDAQ closed down 96 points, but it recovered all of that loss in after hours and was up another 64 points in after hours with NASDAQ 100 futures. Same thing here. I think the Awesome Oscillator ends up forming this divergence. We tried to inch up just above this area right here and ended up selling off at the end of the session. We're still above the 10-period moving average, but yesterday we flipped the cloud back to green. The S&P is likely going to join that, the NASDAQ, I should say, before the weekends, and flipping its cloud back to green. Got the pullback. Told you it was likely going to be short-lived. We bounced off gap support here just above it. S&P did the same thing. And I think you get these divergences on the Awesome Oscillators and on the RSIs, and then I think you get the bigger pullback. We're going to go higher, but then I think we're eventually going to move back towards the 200 and the 50 as the 50 comes up here to either just about to cross above the 200 or as they cross. Bitcoin's already gotten the bullish cross. The death cross has likely marked the bottom, as I've told you back at the bottom when I predicted this rally. I told you we're going to get a massive rally to the 200, probably overthrow it. We did at the 2007 top. We overthrew that level, and then we came back to the 200 period moving averages there on those daily charts. So bottom, I called at the bottom, followed by that historic record rally. 12% here on NASDAQ, 9.5% on the S&P, and then we had the record-breaking winning streak on the S&P 500. After that, we got another 6-day winning streak on the S&P 500. And again, the bears, we were going to crash, and this rally was never going to happen. I told you we were bottoming with the tariffs. I was correct. I told you this rally was going to happen. I was correct. We could either form a little inverse head and shoulders right here and pull back, or we could just blow right past this area. But those scenarios back down at the bottom. Blew right past this scenario. Again, the bears continue to tell us we're going to go down. I'm seeing right now that are saying bull market ends in 3 days. It ends in 3 days. The next leg down of this bear market, I should say the bull market rally here. The rally that, I called 30% lower on the NASDAQ and 23.5% lower on the S&P. The rally the bears told us wasn't going to happen. That rally. Absolutely incredible. And I continue to be bullish. We're going to get a pullback soon, but I think we go higher first, and then I think we get a bigger pullback. Bitcoin goes a little bit higher as well. We get these wave twos pulling back, then a powerful, powerful move higher after that once that next pullback is done. This pullback, as I talked about, is likely just a small pullback as we go closer towards the February top. Everything playing out as predicted, everything playing out just beautifully. Again, well, we got a bearish reversal of conditions on the S&P. It's likely going to turn back to bullish before the weekends in all likelihood. Some momentum turning down. Again, the trend signals are still bullish here for the S&P 500. I think you're going to go take out this high. Again, signals nailed the top, nailed the bottom, the reversal with the higher low, higher high. Signals still remain bullish. Some momentum signals turning down while we go sideways, but now we're trying to turn back up with the rebound off of Friday's low with our short trading week here. Here, momentum turned down, but bars are still green right here. So again, we'll see if we can resume the advance with the S&P daily chart. We've had this pullback, but trend signals are still bullish. Momentum is still bullish. Bullish signals still hanging in there, even though we've had this pullback on the S&P 500. Still have a bearish reversal of conditions. Momentum line still bearish. The trend signals are still bullish. We're trying to bounce off the 200 period moving average. We've got the shaded area telling us that a squeeze move is getting ready to happen. I don't know if it'll be up or down, but that's what it's telling us. And I think you're likely going to get a divergence right here on a momentum that ends up taking us up higher, maybe even a triple divergence before all is said and done. Similar to what I'm looking for on the RSI and on the Awesome Oscillator. Same thing here with momentum here in the daily time frame. The bars here tried to flip red, bounced off the 200 period moving average, flipped right back to green. The cloud is still bullish at this point, so we'll see what happens. Bars over here, we've got some warning bars that this rally was going to end up filling, but bars turned red here all the way down. Tried to flip it here, couldn't do it, and then we flipped after we got the higher low before we got the higher high here. And signal's still hanging in there, bullish. I think the S&P is going to head up to the upper Bollinger Band here to test this high. That's what I think is going to happen. Signal's still bullish here. I've talked about two different scenarios. One is that we've completed our first leg higher and we pull back. Now, again, that means we stop making new highs. We got to get a lower high here and continue the decline back down to the cloud, back towards the 50 period. That would mean that completed our first wave higher and we're getting wave two, or I marked it here, or down over here somewhere. Still possible if we see everything begin to turn back to bearish. I think it's more likely we pop higher to test the highs, as I've talked about. This bearish inside day forming this bearish Harami cross pattern. The cross there, the doji, is an inside day. It got confirmed. We got a follow through, but that might have been it. That might have just been a smaller pullback, and we can resume the advance off the 200, off the 20 period, the blue line. The 200 is the black line. Our 100 period there. Bigger sell-off would take us back to the cloud, back to the 50 period moving average. I think you're still going to go higher and end up getting a divergence on the Awesome Oscillator, end up getting a divergence on the RSI. About this being wave one, wave two, wave three, maybe four, and now we get five, or we could still be in wave three. I've been showing you the count on the 60-minute chart. CD is trying to roll over here, though. Be watching to see what happens with the Nvidia earnings and how they impact the market by tomorrow's close. Here is the wave count on the 60-minute chart, where we have an extended wave here. Not done, but it keeps going, and I've marked a blue count here and a black count. The black count suggests we're still in the wave three. Then we get a 4 and a 5, and that could even end up forming a triple divergence here in the daily time frame. Did I say 60-minute chart? Daily time frame. If I said 60 a minute ago, I meant daily. On that RSI divergence there. Lower high so far, but I think a divergence will form, and we could even form a triple divergence. The other possibility is the blue count, where we have a 1, a 2, and then we've now completed 3. This is 4, and we now get 5 for either a lower high, or we come up and go higher and maybe slam into that trend line for a higher high and slightly above this peak. That's what Bitcoin has done. And again, the market followed Bitcoin lower. The market is following Bitcoin back up, as I've correctly predicted. It's risen 50% since the day I called the bottom. My signals did a really good job. You want to see those signals, go watch my Bitcoin video at the end of this one. Very, very good signals, bottoming signals, the very day of the bottom. I think it'll top soon. I think we'll probably get a pop higher. It'll pop, top, and then drop, and I think the S&P is going to end up doing the same thing. Whether this is 4 and now we get wave 5, or whether we're still in wave 3 here, is questionable. Again, Elliott wave speculation. I never trade it. I use it to try to determine where price might be going. This direction. If we get the sell-off right now, then again, that other scenario is in play. This scenario would suggest that we go higher and then come back and sell off for the wave 2. Still have a possible inverse head and shoulders pattern, as I've talked about here. If we just get more, go up higher, or even a lower high, not even reaching that level, but you'd still have the possibility of an inverse head and shoulders, but to get more of a shallow retracement rather than something deeper, a 78.6 Fibonacci retracement or something, more of a shallow retracement. And I think see the same thing with Bitcoin, maybe a 0.3 or 0.38.2%, 50% retracement, something like that. Here on the 60-minute chart, I still have that one scenario here where we've completed the top and we're going to get this ABC move down. We can make new highs, then the extended wave scenario comes into play. This scenario would be invalidated if we go make a new high. So we'll be watching to see if we can do that with the Nvidia earnings tomorrow or with the PCE inflation data come Friday. Divergence here gave us the sell-off. We'll see what happens. Is there more selling pressure? Do we move back to the 200 period moving average? Should we take out the cloud? The 50, we popped back above it. We're right at it. 50 is going sideways here. Broke the trend line here. Is back testing, or are we going to now resume the advance? A bigger sell-off, we got to see signals, more signals turn bearish. We've seen momentum turn bearish. Can it turn back to bullish? NASDAQ and S&P, we got these hollow red candlesticks, and we've jumped back now above the 10 period here in NASDAQ. Again, do we get that bigger correction right now, or we pop up towards this trend line right here, and again, go make a new high? That's what Bitcoin's done. Will the market do it as well? I think that's very, very possible. We end up forming a divergence here. MACD is at risk of rolling over here. So again, even if we go back and fill the gaps from Monday's rally higher here with NASDAQ, you still may try to gravitate back up to test this high. NASDAQ's bouncing off the momentum cloud here and getting back above the 10, just above our 20 period moving average. S&P's bouncing off that 200 in the 20 period moving average. We approach the close of the month. We're up nearly 9% for the month after, again, that recovery, all the losses from the previous month with the sell-off to the April low there. All of those losses recovered, and we ended up closing positive, and now we're up another 9%. I think you're going to end up forming a massive divergence and could be headed up towards this upper boundary of the channel, bouncing off the 50-month moving average, our trend line of support, going all the way back to the 2009 low. The S&P bounced off the trend line from the 2020 low. Again, I told you got to take these levels out if we're going to have this bear market crash. Kramer and the bears were telling us when I told you we were bottoming. The horizontal support level from the previous peak and these levels of support. I was correct. Predicted this rally. At some point we're going to pull back, but I still think you're headed higher. Told on NASDAQ here, it was a repeat of the 2022 crash. But he was saying we're going to get rejection at the 200 period moving average. Oh, we got rejection at it right here. We're going to get rejection. I told you we may just blow right past that level and keep going. My signals were still bullish. Now we're up 30%, and the bears have been telling us we're going to crash all the way up. At some point we're going to get a pullback to what we've had. Just keep going up to this trend line for a test. We may make new highs like Bitcoin before we get the pullback, so be open-minded to that. Trend signals are still bullish at this point. Even though momentum is stalled, it could quickly turn back to bullish.